Hey guys! So today the big talk is MLA format. So MLA is actually really important for this class. When you read the syllabus, which I'm sure you did, you saw that one of our outcomes for this class is an understanding of MLA format, right, and the ability to apply it. So this is going to be really important. For completing this class. For each essay, you guys are going to have to put it in MLA format. We are on MLA, the 8th edition. If you're going to be using EasyBib or any of those resources, which are totally fine, you can if you want to make sure that they're putting things in MLA 8 format. It's the 8th edition, not the 7th. One little caution about that. If you don't know what information goes where for those resources, then your citation is not going to be right. So definitely think about that if you use those. So MLA stands for Modern Language Association. Every year a bunch of people that just love English and love rules get together and they talk about how to make everything in the same format. And that's kind of where MLA comes from. So let's start with the first page. On the top left-hand corner of your first page should be your name, your professor's name, the course, and the date that the essay is due, day, month, year. All should be double-spaced, and this should be, and it just says underneath that on the top of the first page, right? Just kind of repeating what I said up at the top. On the top right-hand corner of each page, right, each page after that and the first page should have your last name and the page number. This is the header. So if you are using Microsoft Word or whatever, you can always just choose the option that's like MLA format, right, and it'll format it for you and you just need to input the information. If you don't know how to do that, one thing you can always do is like look on YouTube, right? You have the internet. It's very helpful. You also need an original title for your essay. So I don't want to see titles like Essay 1 or Language. This title should be in title case, which means that the first letter of every word should be capitalized. It should be the same font as the rest of your essay, and it should be centered. One little note about the title, this is the first thing that your reader looks at, right? This is kind of the first place that they kind of read your writing. You can go ahead and get creative with this if you would like. It's a nice way to grab their attention, right? It's kind of like your first hook. You do need to double space your essay. It needs to be in 12-point Times New Roman font. For some reason, Word kind of makes everything in Calibri now, so you need to make sure that you go through and you change it to Times New Roman, even that header. And you need in-text citations for each quote or paraphrase. This is really important. Earlier on, you guys learned about plagiarism, right? And one way to make sure that you're not plagiarizing is to have small quotes so they don't make up the bulk of your essay, and have in-text citations for them, right? Even if you're paraphrasing, which means even if you're taking someone else's ideas and putting it in your own words, it needs to be cited. They should have the author's last name and the page number. Down here at the bottom, I have an example, right? See that I have quotes surrounding the quote. Parentheses, we have the last name, the page number, and parentheses, and then a period outside of that, right? That period is really important because it shows that everything, the quote and the citation, that's all one kind of idea, right? So the period goes outside all of that. I end up getting a lot of really interesting stuff in between the parentheses. Once again, you only need the last name and the page number, no comma here. You don't need it to say PG. You don't need it to say page. You don't need to say the paragraph, right? I get all kinds of funky things, but just last name, page number. So the first time that you use a quote or a paraphrase by an author, I'm going to move this so you can read the rest of this, you want to introduce the title of the work and the author's whole name, right? So the first time you use a quote by Amy Tan, you need to say in her essay, Mother Tongue, right? And put Mother Tongue in quotes because it's the title of a shorter work. Amy Tan writes, and then use the quote. I do want to mention that you should be referring to authors by their full name or last name, not their first name. You don't know them. They're not your bud. The other thing that I had just mentioned is that when you have a shorter work, it's in quotes. Longer works are in italics, right? And that's something that we want to remember. When we get to our novel, Frankenstein, that's in italics. The short stories are in quotes. Our articles that we read for the first paper, those are in quotes, right? Because those are shorter works. I do want to note that if you meant for the quote as your transition, you only need the page number that you got that quote from. All right, so if you say, if it's the first time you're mentioning or using a quote by a source and you say Amy Tan writes, then after that quote, you just need the page number because you already said the author. Okay. Your quotes should be 1 to 2 lines at most. We're not going to be using block quotes. Our essays aren't long enough to kind of make that okay. Also, one thing we want to focus on is only using the part of the quotes that we need, right? And this is a really important skill that we're learning in this class. So 1 to 2 lines at most. So what this means is sometimes you might need to take out a chunk of the quote. Sometimes it means that you just kind of start the quote in the middle of a sentence, right? If you do need to take out a chunk of the quote because it isn't needed, it's kind of material you don't need, you can do ellipses in the middle of the quote, right? That's the ... A bracket always kind of indicates that whatever's in the bracket, it's not part of the original quote. So if you do take out of a chunk of the quote and suddenly the quote doesn't quite make sense and you need to add like a word or two to make the quote make sense, you can add in words as long as they're in those brackets. Okay. You do need a works cited page, and it should be titled Works Cited, capital W, capital C, not reference, not bibliography, works cited. It should be the last page of its essay. It should be on its own page. All your entries need to be alphabetized, and the second line of your entry should have a hanging left indent. And that's something that you can do through Microsoft Word. You just select things and go to paragraph, and you can look it up on YouTube if you're having a hard time with that. So these are sample works cited entries. So if it's a print book, you have the author's last name and first name. So in general, you start with the author's last name and first name and then the title of the work. So print book, author's last name, first name, then the title, right? We know that if it's a longer work like a novel or a book, it needs to be in italics. We have the publisher and the date and then a period. This is a hanging left indent, right? Where the top line is flush with the side of the page and then the subsequent lines are indented. An article from a scholarly journal has the author's last name, the first name, then the title of the article in quotes because it's a shorter work, right? And then this information. Now, sometimes we're going to be using articles that don't have all of this information, right? Even the OER articles, like Amy Tan's article, we don't necessarily have all this information. So just use the information that you're given, right? You don't need to go look up the rest of the information. Just use the information that you're given and just go ahead and put it in there. So one side note, if the title of an article or the author's names are in all caps, which is often the case actually through our library database, then you want to change it to title case. And again, use last names when discussing authors. So Purdue OWL is a great resource. It can also help with APA formatting or Chicago Manual style. So I do want to take a second and go there with you right now. Every time I write a paper, I double check my citations through Purdue OWL, and I did this all the way through grad school, and I even do it now. So Purdue OWL, just Google Purdue OWL, got it, Purdue OWL, MLA citation. Let me get rid of this lady. No, I don't, lady. So on the left-hand side, they have these different options, right? They have an introduction, an overview, and workshop if you want to take a look at that. In-text citations, format and quotations. So you can look and make sure that you're citing correctly. It has all kinds of different options, right? If you know the author, if you don't know the author. They also have the works cited page basic format for you to go ahead and take a look at if you would like, right? It's got kind of the basic rules written down here that you can take a look at. It also has, what you want to do if it's missing some information, which is great. Over here, you can see, if you look to the left-hand side, you can see the different styles that you might need for other classes. They also have other resources. They have a sample works cited page. They have a presentation. If you hated mine, you can go ahead and check that out. It's actually really great. It's just a little bit longer than mine. I'd like to check out an MLA sample paper really quickly, just so you can kind of see what I am expecting from your paper. Move me over a little bit. Sorry, I keep moving. Scroll down a little bit. Okay, so we have kind of on the side, we have title, we have name, page number. Right? We're doing things like indenting the first line of a paragraph, right? If you scroll down, it talks about things like endnote, text citations, right? It talks about when to sort of put in your own words. It talks get rid of words with an ellipses. So they have an example here. So this is where they've shortened this quote by putting in ellipses, right, to show us that they took out a chunk of information, which is totally so I definitely suggest you take a look at this sample paper before you turn in your paper to make sure that you're kind of on it. Again, Purdue OWL, absolutely amazing. I use it all through grad school. Please make sure that you take some notes so that you can jot down the essential information and you're able to relate it when it comes to writing your own essay.